Hey everybody, welcome back to Protopals. Today we're going to be going over the basics of 3D modeling using a software called Onshape. Now, before we get started, what is Onshape? Well, Onshape is special because it's a CAD software that runs completely on your browser. It's not like other softwares where you need to download a file, and it's not really that CPU heavy. So what's really good about it as well is that it's really good for collaborating with your team members. To get started, we're going to click on the top left where we have Create, and in Onshape, we have Documents, very similar to Google Drive. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on New Document, and for now we're just going to name this Test Project, Enter, and we're going to be put onto this screen. Now over here, this is our Onshape view page. So in the middle, we have our 3D workspace, as you can see. And in our left, we have our history timeline. So anything that we do is going to be recorded. For example, when we're creating something, let's say we initially set its dimensions, because what'll happen is it'll show up in our timeline. We can always edit the dimensions later on to change for our suits. So the first thing you do when it comes to 3D modeling is you create what's called a 2D sketch. Now, when it comes to 3D modeling, you always start with a 2D model, and then from there, you build it into 3 dimensions. So today, we're just going to start off with a simple cube, and we're going to do some edits with it. So what we're going to start off with doing is in the top left, we're going to click on Sketch, and we're going to create a new sketch. Now, the first thing we have to do is create a plane. Select the plane that we're going to use our sketch on. So in this case, you can just hover over either the top, front, or right plane. And in this case, I'm going to click on top. Now, right now we're in this sketch, but you're going to see it's kind of weird because we're working in 2D, but our view is in 3D. So what we can do is we can go over to our cube in the top right, and you'll see that you can select different faces. What we're going to do is, because I selected the top plane for our sketch, on the cube, I'm going to select top. And you'll see that I'm suddenly put in this 2-dimensional view, which makes a lot more sense for what we're doing. And also, because we're working on sketch, you'll see that our top toolbar has changed for everything to be 2-dimensional. So the first thing we're going to do is, if we're making a cube in 2 dimensions, a cube is just a square. So in the top, we're going to look for corner rectangle, and we're going to click on the drop-down arrow next to it, and you're going to see different types of rectangles we can make. In this case, we're going to make a center point rectangle. So we're going to select that. Now you're going to notice when you put your cursor in the actual view space, you'll see a little cross. That means that anytime you click and drag, it'll create the rectangle. So for us, because this is a center rectangle, I'm going to put it in the center. So you can hover over the little center point. This is our origin. If you click on it, you can select and then drag your mouse out, and you'll see Onshape is going to create a little rectangle. Now we want a square. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click anywhere for now, and you'll see as I click, the shape suddenly gets filled in, and you'll see that there are dimensions on both sides, the bottom and the left. In this case, the one that's selected right now is this 81.315, and right now it has a white box around it. That means that whatever I type will become the dimensions for it. So on my keyboard, I'm just going to type 50, and then what'll happen is when I click enter, it'll constrain that dimension to 50 millimeters. And then you'll notice that the next dimension also has a white box. Because we're making a cube, which in 2 dimensions is a square, we're going to want both sides to be the same. So for the left, I'm also going to type 50 and hit enter. Now my shape is constrained into a square. That's all we're going to be doing in this shape for now. So now that we have this, we're going to go to sketch 1, and we're going to select the green checkbox. What this does is it lets Onshape know that we have finished working on the sketch, and we can work on the rest now. So if you zoom around and you pan around, you'll see that we have now this 2D shape, but we don't want 2 dimensions. We want it to be a 3-dimensional shape. So what can we do? Well, Onshape has what's called extruding, and this is common in all 3D modeling softwares. To extrude this piece, we're going to go up to the top left, and on the right of the sketch, you'll see what's called extrude. We'll select this, and the same way that the sketch worked, we have our little information panel on the left. So what we're going to do first is we need to determine which face we want to extrude. So we're going to hover over our square, and we're just going to click on it. Now, Onshape knows, using its intelligence, that we want to extrude the entire square face. So what we see over here in this information panel is depth. Depth is basically how tall you want to extrude it. Now, because we are making a cube, that means all dimensions in the X, Y, and Z need to be the same. So because in our sketch we made it 50 millimeters, in the depth, I'm also going to make it 50 millimeters. And when I click enter, you'll see a little preview over here, and you'll see it's a perfect cube. Now, when I select the green checkbox, it'll finalize it. Now, like I was talking about initially, Onshape stores your history. So let's say you want to change this. Let's say you don't want 50 millimeters. You realize later on you want to change the dimensions. Over here, you can go to extrude, and if you right click, you'll see the option to edit it. Now, I can change this depth again to 5 millimeters, let's say. And when I click enter, it'll change the dimensions right there. Now, for the purpose of this, I want a cube. So I'm going to go back to my extrude, and I'm going to edit it back to 50 millimeters. So now you'll see that we have a three-dimensional shape in Onshape, and we're almost there. Now, we created a basic shape, but what's good about CADing is you can edit this shape. So there's a couple options we can do. Now, in this tutorial, I'm going to go over what fillets are. Fillets and chamfers are two different tool features where you can take an edge and you can change its profile. So right now, if you look at this edge of the cube, you'll see it's a sharp 90-degree angle. Now, for practical applications, you don't want a sharp edge. You want something a little rounded. So in the top, we have a bunch of options to edit our shape. And you'll see there's one right here called fillet. And what this will do is it'll round the edge. So what happens, same way we have with our sketch and our extrude, it's going to open up this little box and it'll ask us to select entities or edges to fillet. So I'm going to select on one for now, and you'll see in the preview, it creates this little rounded curve along the edge. This is great because when you're doing like real applications like 3D printing and stuff like that, you can change it like so. Now what we can do is we can select all the edges along the top of the cube, and you'll see that it'll fully round it. Or you could select full round, and then you could select this face and all of the above, and it'll fully round the faces. So you can really choose how you want to do this. In our case, we're just going to do the edges, and then you can also see that we can select the radius. So right now it's using a 1.5 millimeter radius, but if we increase it to, let's say, 5 millimeters, you'll see that the round becomes a lot more prominent. So in our case, we'll leave it at, let's say, 2.5 millimeters, and we'll hit enter. So you'll see that this is how we can round edges, but let's say instead of rounding it, we just want to slice it. We don't want it to be sharp, but we don't want it to be rounded as well. We can do what's called a chamfer. A chamfer is very similar to a fillet, but it creates a beveled edge. So we'll select this edge, and we'll create a chamfer on this one. You'll see it's very similar, but instead of rounding it, it'll just be a flat bevel. Next up, we can create holes. Holes are created the same way we created the cube, but instead of adding material, we can subtract material. So the same way we made a face in a sketch, I'm going to select this top face, and I'm going to go over here and create a sketch. Now what'll happen is whenever I make the sketch, it'll apply to the face of the cube. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the top and create a center point circle. I'm going to click on the origin, and I'm going to expand this out. Now, let's say I do a diameter of, 25 millimeters. It's the same way we did for the cube, but with circles, it'll work on our diameter. I've created a circle with a diameter of 25 millimeters, And now I'm going to exit out of this sketch. Now you can see that the circle is visible in the 3D plane, but there's no actual material to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on extrude and I'm going to select the circle. Now, what normally will happen is it wants to add material. So you see it wants to extrude the circle upward, but in our little panel for extrusion, we can click remove. And what it'll do is it'll automatically want to go in the opposite direction where there's already material. So we can set the depth, which we know is 50 millimeters, but let's say we change that height later on, that depth may not go all the way through. So instead, we're going to click on this part where you see blind. Instead of blind, we're going to click on up to face. You'll see that this goes over here, and then we can select which face we want to terminate through. And you will see that we have created a hole going all the way through the object. Now this is good because irregardless of what the dimensions of our shape are, this extrusion will always go all the way through. For example, I'm going to go to extrude settings and I'm going to edit it. And instead of 50, I'll make it 100 millimeters. Now you'll see that the hole will still go all the way through. This is the basics of 3D modeling using Onshape. And I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you were able to understand how to create basic shapes on Onshape. This was Protopals, and I'm going to see you guys later.